Welcome back to Turn Down for What, your source for EV news and updates. Like and subscribe for more content like this episode. Let's dive on in.
Welcome back to Turn Down for What. We are here and we've made it. I think Chris posted an episode last week and was talking about my trip away, and I got to go to Disney World and then went on a Disney cruise. So it was a double dipper last week and got to enjoy that with the family. Came back and got the flu, so I'm on the mend vocally.
You didn't say it. Another day.
Another episode.
Sorry.
Thank you, Jesse. It's a sickness. It's the sickness, man.
Came back to my head. Another day.
Another episode.
There you go.
All right. Anyways, I have the flu, so it's all messed up my brain and everything. But I'm on the mend now, so I'm on the upswing. But I am recording from the house today.
It's that bird. It's that bird pox monkey flu or whatever you got going on.
Whatever you get on cruises out in the middle of the warm Caribbean, and I got to come back to 15 degrees and snowy here in East Tennessee. So I'm ready for warmer weather. Jesse and I have a business trip down to Florida next week, and there's a cold front coming down. So we're going to land in Tallahassee, and the high that day is like 35 in Tallahassee. No. And I'm like, come on now. Like, I can't even escape it. But anyways.
Well, you got to get Jesse to Disney because I just went to Disneyland a couple weeks ago. You've been to Disney World. Patrick and Liv went to Disneyland and pretty much just like lived there. And wait. And then Jesse, we got to get you with some Disney joy, man. We need to get you decked out and get you.
I would love to. One thing that this trip is going to highlight is Josh and I will be recording some of our trip to show how we are going into a state that is not launched yet and who we're talking to in a way to kind of show community involvement. And obviously one of those questions is how can we help EV drivers when they go to Disneyland? Josh has done that before, so he knows what's good. He knows what's bad about it. For us, it's all about providing the opportunity to charge to where you're not afraid to go somewhere or you don't have anxiety to go somewhere. So,
and I'm pre-stating my intentions. I've told this to Jesse. I am going to work with Disney Imagineers, and we are going to put on Walt Disney World property the most epic,
allegedly
Disney themed EV charging station, Power Up America, in collaboration with Disney. It's going to be fun. It's going to happen.
It's just
huge time, but we're going to get there.
You have to start charging with a magic wand.
Exactly.
That would be great.
Yeah, it's big.
That's already taken. So
no, but I mean, once you have their stuff, you could do all sorts of fun, cool stuff. But I'm going to work on that one. That one's coming. But maybe I should take Jesse while we're driving through Florida, just drop into Disney World and give him some Minnie Mouse ears and call it a day.
Hey, I'm open to anything, but that aside, that's next week. I want to get into our special guest here today and really talk about what they just left and the fun they had and some of the great things they did at CES. Obviously, I'm a Honda person. I love Honda, and I'm super excited about that vehicle. And I just thank you both for being here. What did you see, and what's the most exciting thing that you took from the event?
Well, first off, we have the wonderful privilege, just to name drop them. We have Patrick and Liv back from Mach-E vlog. Tremendous honor. We said it's an honored guest, but we just have to name drop them. Patrick and Liv,
the legends,
coming back onto our measly podcast. It's just it's an amazing privilege to have y'all back on.
Thank you. Man. What a pleasure to be here on Turn Down for What.
Yeah, we've been wanting to come on for a while.
Yeah,
been following you guys, watching. So it's great to be on. We're also recovering from getting sick at CES. So
we keep disappearing for a cough break. I feel you.
CES, like there was a lot of cool stuff. But like I'm sure like if you followed like all the tech stuff, you saw this was another year all about AI, which was of course on the vehicle tech side. But the other thing was I think that the things that were looming over CES this year, one was software-defined vehicles. Everybody was talking about that, and there was like a lot of the suppliers, but also the OEMs are talking about how they're going to distinguish their vehicles with software-defined vehicles, and the cynic in me wants me to say it's like it's a software required vehicle or a subscription required vehicle is what they're really aiming for. But yeah, it was really exciting to see some of the actual OEMs that were there. On the side of what we're actually going to see here in the US, Honda, Sony Afeela, and Scout were like the big ones. And I was really excited by Honda because we saw them last year when they showed the first prototypes, and there was the Saloon and I think
The Space Hub.
Space Hub. Now the SUV that you're seeing on screen, I thought it looked really ready.
Oh yeah, and it was trippy because last year they unveiled the Saloon, which we got to see this year as well, and the Space Hub, but there was no whisper of the SUV, so it was very surprising to see something that's like market ready and that fits such a segment that's so popular. So to actually like be able to hop on stage, get inside and touch them and play with them. And I mean, they're coming in 2026. So the SUV is coming the beginning of 2026. The Saloon, which I'm going to assume is the one that Jesse really wants. The Saloon's coming late 2026, which is really, really soon. So trippy to have them just appear and like they're coming.
That's such a cool looking vehicle. I mean, it's kind of like an entry, like the Cybertruck. It's unlike any other vehicle you've seen on the road. You know, a lot of vehicles will come out and it kind of looks like a partner vehicle, like the Scout, as they're, you know, they drop their really cool, unique vehicles, but it kind of looks like a Bronco. And I mean, like they all have like similarities to other brands, but that vehicle it's a class of its own with its look and presentation. It's just a really unique look.
It's hard to imagine it being out so soon, like only a year or so away, because it still looks like a concept car to me. Like, do they think that's pretty close to production intent? Did you get any details on how different from what we're seeing on your video it's going to be?
Yeah, they sort of like they didn't
were
say
vague.
Yeah, they were
they were
they were
very
typical
vague.
vague when they're talking about a prototype, but they were also very clear, as in we intend to bring something like this to market. So and overall, like I think it's really impressive. Like we saw a radical concept last year. We're seeing something closer this year, and they're saying it's going to be at the end of next year. And if you guys remember, like the ID Buzz has been floating around for years and years.
Yep.
And they're finally coming here to the US. This seems like they're really pretty close. And you know, some of the changes that we saw from last year to this year, you're like, oh, I can see how that'll work. Now, it does seem like it's like low to the ground. Like, how is that part going to work? Is it going to be? They did mention it's going to be more of like their high end. Like they know they'll sell a ton of SUVs, or they hope. They know the Saloon is a bit more radical, and as I've been saying, it's like it's going to be the one that just turns your head. And I think for them, they're looking at it maybe as like this is their big splash, and they want to go like, here's the Honda Saloon, and everybody's gonna be like, oh wow, they make EVs. And then they go there and then they go like, well, we're not buying that, but look at this SUV over here.
It's also a very developed design language. Like that kind of controversial rear that's present on both of them is like kind of a stamp of like, this is the potentially, in my impression, the design language that they're going forward with. So it really does feel like they're establishing this series, like the Zero series, and establishing their own purpose-built EVs. So I think it's kind of exciting. Like, what else are they going to develop that looks a bit like that? It's nice to see a style develop, and obviously like the tech inside it will be the biggest part when we're like using it, but
I think something that you've seen, like even in Tesla, I mean, they took the Cybertruck look, and now in their refreshed models that you're seeing, I think it was released in China, but I mean, you're starting to see that they're like the refreshed Model Y, I think it was, is going to have that new front light bar that's similar to the new Cyber Taxi that they unveiled. I mean, they're kind of refreshing their brand to look around that style, and so maybe Honda's trying to do that with their EV lineup as well, just to try to give it like that whole new product line and series.
Oh yeah.
And
Is the Honda?
Oh, go ahead.
Is the Honda? Am I confused, or is the Honda also the one that has the Sony software, or am I confusing two things?
So this,
That's
yeah,
the Sony Honda Mobility, which we also filmed with, but we haven't released that video yet. And like that's why I bring the distinction that it feels like Honda is really setting the stage for the Zero series, that it's a separate whole thing. Like the Fila very much, just to jump in, like feels to me like a Sony product, but like the Zero series just feels completely separate. Aside from the auto opening doors, like that felt similar.
yeah.
But
And so, like, if you would ask me, like, a couple of years ago, before we saw, more details about the Honda Zero and the Afila, and Sony, basically, it seems like what they were doing is like, we're going to build the software, and Honda's going to provide us with the like EV car platform, and then Honda's like, well, we're going to do an EV platform and put our own software. If you would have asked me between the two, like which one would have been a better, product in the end, I would have probably said the Sony Afila, because we don't know what Honda's going to do with software. They're going to be very boring. They're going to be whatever. Sony may be like more cutting edge, but after seeing them both, I was pretty disappointed in what I saw with Sony Afila, Sony Honda Afila, especially with the price, but also their software just seemed really buggy, and like, yay, you could do I forget even what, like gaming themes and stuff like that.
And
like,
watching movies and like swiping the movie around, very much like focus on consumption. You have a little PlayStation. What is the term?
Controller.
Joystick controller.
Controller. Yeah.
Brain, whatever. So you have a controller, so you can play games and whatever. It definitely seemed like the software was the primary, but it just made me think, because everyone just released their other people just released their Honda Zero series footage like right now, like maybe an hour ago. So did people get to play with the software?
I don't know.
I know. I'm like, I kind of want to look on the side, because I know Jordan
from Out of Spec
was in it, because that would be a big distinction. It feels like the Filo is more promoted as a software vehicle, like something that you get into for the Sony, the PlayStation, the consumption software, and then the Zero series was more about the design of the vehicle itself.
And this goes back to, again, a lot of the theme of CES being software-defined vehicles, and a lot of that is the user interfaces. And I think it's really interesting because I've had a lot of criticism of the Tesla interface. It looks really good. Like if it were sitting on my desktop, I'm like, that looks great. But when I'm doing 80 miles an hour on the freeway and it like pops up a little warning message that's really down and low, and I'm like, you can call me a boomer or whatever, but I'm like, when the font is like this big, it's hard to see. And I'm like, it seems like Sony may be in that same mindset, but Honda, I can see the hints of that design language that's going to make it look good, but also functional. And we have a Mach-E. I'll say like ours is very functional, but like some of the fonts are like giant size and old school looking, but it's like very easy to read. And I'm like, I want somebody that like figures it out, makes it so like the software looks good, and is also functional. And we can get to a company that's doing that a little bit later.
That'd be cool.
I want to talk about with that definitely is how it kind of goes together. So obviously, the way you're talking about the controller, Liv, I don't think I want to see you on Fortnite anytime soon. So we'll leave that one out. But it does bring up a key point about Fortnite. Fortnite is a free game. So where do you make your money at? They make billions of dollars. And it's because they have these characters. You can get anybody. You can get packages. Right now, my sons have Godzilla that has entered the chat for the game. So it comes back to what I see with Rivian. And during Christmas, Rivian came out with a Knight Rider package that the dash and everything became Knight Rider. As a fan of David Hasselhoff in Germany, I loved the fact that you could get that. So then I thought,
was cool.
That's money that you could, anybody, you as a software designer can go out, create a package, sell it. And if you have the right panels, if you have extra panels on the inside, you can have a University of Tennessee theme. You can have a Mach-E blog a vlog theme, that's inside your car. So that's another step of bringing software in that you can monetize and make money in. And then I also still want to call out the investment from Ford into this arena. When Peter Stern made his jump from Apple into Ford, I kept thinking, what is that for? Because he was one of the key pillars to create so many great programs there. And with what you're telling me about what you saw, it's really coming together that they are looking at how to monetize the software side and bring it in. Is that a fair assessment of what you saw?
It seems like it. And like, nobody really wants to say of like, we're really excited because in 5 years, you're going to have subscriptions for everything. But what they are saying is like, you'll be able to modify this screen and you'll be able to personalize that. And I'm like, to me, I'm just like, yeah, they're going to make it so like, even because I forget what manufacturer, is it Kia or Volvo, that has like your headlights can have startup sequences. And Kia, and you can pay to get different ones. And I'm like,
and
yep.
too, actually. I like your idea, Jesse, though, because like we get mods for our cars, we get like custom seats or whatever. So why not be able to mod the software with the skin? Like, why are we stuck with a skin that's predefined when we might be able to choose something else that suits us better? So I like that idea, and I kind of don't mind it. Though I think it always has to be elective. Like, you don't want to be forced into the payment to be able to use something that you bought, right?
One of the things for me is like, we did a review of the Cadillac Escalade, and we just did a review of like the Silverado, and like something as simple as Apple CarPlay. Like, that's an example of a mod in the software that like these OEMs are having to, opt into for licensing, and they've tried to redesign it on their own. But like, Apple CarPlay is so much more advanced than just the traditional outlay of the base software that's built into the GM product. And it's like something like that would be nice to be able to opt into for your vehicle. Because I was driving the Cadillac, I connected to my phone. I'm like, I can't get to the mapping software. And it's like, it's so much more difficult to navigate. And that there's some base functionality, but just that interactivity of bringing in the software genius that is in Apple and be able to click a button and there's your maps. And like, it's just some of those simple things. It goes kind of go back to the point, but it's like there needs to be that ability to have the modularity in the software, because I would have hesitations to buy a GM or Chevy product because of that software. Like, I like that enough, but they've drawn a line in the sand and said we're not going to do that anymore in those vehicles. And that's a choice, but at the same time, like, if you're going to do that, you need to have some really robust software in the background to justify it, because I don't require Ford in my truck to have a robust navigation, because we know it, I don't know, at least in my
it doesn't
efficient with charging outlays and how all that goes. But because they have Apple CarPlay, when I get into my vehicle, I'm not navigating Ford's software. I'm just navigating Apple CarPlay to go to my music, to go to my maps, to go to my audiobooks. It's all there. And so something like that can cover up a lot, but having that ability to maybe have your base software, even if it is insufficient, but have those overlays of things. Design overlays, I think, is a pretty easy mod that you can, justify, but the inner workings of the software open up the door so those people had done it really well, and don't shut that down.
And it's actually 100%. Surprising, because like a lot of people don't realize like CarPlay and Android Auto are free licenses. Like, there's like automakers. It's sort of funny. It's like people are surprised because they think like Google and Apple are like licensing this to like GM, and that's why GM is pulling back. And like, it's not.
That's what I thought.
No, it's free. But what GM wants you to do is to get their data subscription and use their software. So
they want your data.
They're like, that's where they want to make their money. And the reason Apple and Google make it free is because then you'll like a better route planner, for example. If I can run that on Android Auto or CarPlay, but for the premium features, I got to subscribe through the Google Play Store or the App Store. And of course, who gets a cut of that? Google and Apple. So they're like, we want this software so that people will, utilize our services. And so, yeah, it's really interesting seeing that. And by the way, the other thing I was going to throw in there real quick is Ford also hired another guy, and I can't remember his name, but he is known for being at Apple for creating like the bundle packages. So you're like, well, I don't want Apple Photos, but I want the other storage. And he's like, well, yeah, but like if we bundle those together, we'll come up with a better package. So he's basically was like the master, the behind creating these packages. So I can see.
Are you talking about Doug Field?
No. He's
Different one.
Yeah, Doug Field was way up. This guy was also
Yeah.
there. Like he created like all the different packaging that the bundling, and it's sort of like this genius thing of like, and I've seen hints of this, coming soon to different manufacturers, so that it's like, well, if you want map data, it costs this, and if you want your satellite radio, it costs this. But if you get maps and satellite radio, it'll save you money. So then they're basically,
you feel compelled. You're compelled for just
it's only
$2.99 more
a month for this, and then that's only another $7 a month, and then pretty soon you're like, holy crap, I'm paying $150 a month in subscription fees.
Ford has until July with me, and then I run out of Blue Cruise, and I'm not paying $700 a year for Blue Cruise, but I really like Blue Cruise, so I either need to go buy a new Ford, or hopefully by then they'll have a bundle deal that I can subscribe to.
The new Fords are only 90 days. So it's some of us that bought early have a lot of those benefits of things early on. I do think some of these packages, I think there's going to be an ebb and flow to it, right? I think what'll happen is I could think of it kind of like cruise control or even adaptive cruise control. When those first came out, they were only in the high premium cars, and they were an add-on, an option that you had to pay for. Now, if you don't get adaptive cruise control, you look sideways and you're like, what? That's basic. How is that not just part of what's going on? I think eventually some of these software through competition, some of the stuff that starts out as subscriptions, some of it will slowly integrate into a standard package, or kind of like Tesla does. They might have, quarter 4 type incentives or things. Hey, if you buy it now, you get this for free. The way they do it with supercharging, or the way these people these can all be drivers, sales drivers, get this package for free for 3 years. If Blue Cruise, even, I don't even think it's $700 anymore. They've changed the price a couple times. So those things are very dynamic on the software end. And I do think that's something that is just, I think they're still trying to figure out what they can and can't sell.
Even if it was $20 a month, I don't think I'd pay for it. Now, Super Cruise, I think I would pay more money for, but like Blue Cruise is not intuitive enough for me to like consider pay. Like as a free add-on, I would use it, but like would I choicefully spend money for Blue Cruise with its limitations? Because I'm limited to 1.0 in my truck, so it's not like I can even get the 1.5 with lane changing or 4 or whatever they're on now with some of those added features. I think Mach-E's are getting those some of those further down the line updates, but we're very rudimentary on our Blue Cruise,
and we did the opposite because we have our Mach-E with 1.3. And then we chose to get an Equinox without Super Cruise. And part of it was we had a press loaner with Super Cruise. And I had been impressed and thought it was like the most comparable to Blue Cruise. But it had the biggest drawback for me previously was like it doesn't work on non-map roads at all, versus Blue Cruise. It's sort of like it can still do things without the map roads. And then we took the press loaner up to LA and back, and it was horrible, like on roads that I had traveled many times with Blue Cruise. And I tried it with Super Cruise. I was like, oh my god. And then we got our Equinox, so I was like, we don't really need it. Plus it's sort of that whole thing of going back to the subscription thing. It's like, well, if I'm going to pay the subscription for 1, I don't want to pay it for 2. So then it's like the first one is like, which one are we going to have it on? So
the one thing is I would like to try the more advanced versions of Blue Cruise, because I can knock Blue Cruise because I just have the very base version of it.
You still have 1.1.
Nicer for sure.
Yeah, we're cheap. We're going to keep the vehicles we got. Now, one thing you piqued my interest earlier. You said we'll get into this here in a minute. You were talking about something awesome that you've seen. What was that?
Yeah. So the Chinese manufacturers were there. So we got to see, we'll say Xpeng. Xpeng had like the outlandish thing. It was like a SUV truck with 6 wheels that was just amazing, and it had like a
personal flying device. I can't remember the
an
name.
eVTOL.
Yep.
So it was like your own little flying device in the back. That was cool, $300,000. But really, what I was talking about was Zeekr was there, and they have cars that are in production in China, and they were literally like, these could actually be on sale here in the U.S. Everybody's like, yeah, that car is in China, but there's no way it would pass safety certifications. And they're like, yeah, no, we're designing these for a global market, but we're just taking it one market at a time where we go. But we got to take a look just at the functionality, but the software side of things is like, it blew me away. Like the Zeekr 001 FR, which is like a Model S Plaid competitor, 0 to 60 in like 2 seconds, that type of thing, around $100,000. The software in it was just phenomenal. Like it was, they had the car and you could like rotate it around, like no lag, had everything from pet mode to track mode to a drifting mode. It's just really, really cool software, and just could see like all the functionality. And then they're like, yeah, this is just sort of like a broken demo because it's in China, for the Chinese market. We just sort of like patched this together for CES. I'm like, well, this blows away anything that we see on like a lot of other cars, and it just looked great. It wasn't like overly gimmicky that I see, like some of the other, manufacturers going. The color contrasts were there. I mean, we sat in with the UE designer. It was actually really cool. Like we sort of were told we have like 5 minutes with Zeekr, and we got like a bit longer than that. And we met like we interviewed the UE designer. The guy that you just saw on the screen was talking about the mix, and he's like the exterior designer, the head of his exterior design. Swedish, by the way. A lot of their design stuff is done in Sweden. And then we met the VP of Zeekr Intelligent Technologies that was talking about, because like on the Zeekr mix that was on the screen, they basically put the B pillar in the doors. So the side doors, it's almost like a little minivan.
When they come together, they form the pillar.
They form the pillar, and I'm like, that's like, amazing.
Is that legal? Is that legal in the US?
I think basically all it has to do is survive like the rollover test and the whatever, and they seem to think it would.
Wow.
And
can they get it into the US? Can they sell it? Can they get it through at some point and manufacture it? Any talk of any of these guys manufacturing here if they could?
No, I think what Zeekr's going to do is they're going to because they're already selling like the 001. I believe the 001 down in Mexico. And I think they have plans for a factory down there. Like they may even be in construction. I'm not sure. So I think they're going to like not come into the US directly. They're going to go into Mexico. And there are already a lot of Chinese companies starting to sell in Mexico. And then they'll use NAFTA or USMCA to start going that route. But they still have a lot of materials from China, so there's still obstacles with that, as well as the other tariffs that could be coming.
But I thought it was extra cool, like the UE designer who got to show us the 001, like he has the previous version. That's what I think he daily drives it at home. So he was like able to reference it. I think it's always indicative like what people drive and like what they're passionate about versus what they're talking about and what they work with. So it was.
I think Kyle from Out of Specs about to come back with a lot of data from China with all of their EVs. I think he's doing quite right now. But yeah, I mean, it looks by every standard like China has far advanced themselves within the EV market. I mean, they're the largest threat to I think we've talked about this in a couple episodes in the past. But they're a large threat to the U.S. OEM system because we're kind of stuck within these certain confines, but China's just gone blasting into the future with some of their technology, but also because they're doing much more scale, like BYD is a gigantic threat to the locals, because we have all of this really, like our biggest issue is we have super expensive EVs, but BYD can mass produce and they have the battery production cornered. And so, I mean, like they can produce I think it was a $12,000 EV with that real small one they had, but like we need $30,000, $25,000 EVs, and
so badly.
Like, American OEMs can't produce that, and so that's where like the question then becomes like, the introduction to the Chinese market, will that just stamp out all of the traditional OEMs and like Tesla survives as the juggernaut that it is? But like, how does the America-China balance work with that? Because if China was allowed untariffed and unrestricted to come in and dump their cars, like they would take over the US market, because they're like you've said, they're further ahead in technology, but also cost-wise, I mean, like every other product that's made in China, I mean, that they're more cost competitive than what we can do in the United States, just because of, I think, manufacturing and economy of scale, but also labor costs and everything else.
And this goes back to a bit as well, like what Ford is sort of planning, and they've shifted their EV priorities because I think, that 3-row SUV that we wanted them to make, and a lot of people are disappointed that they canceled. I'm disappointed that they canceled that, but they have really shifted a lot into getting ready for their low cost EVs. And I think, like people fail to remember, like Jim Farley went over to China, did a bunch of research. He has a lot of experience, like being involved with Toyota and Lexus when they sort of became, more dominant in the US market. So he knows
I think he drives an SU9, the Chinese SU9.
The 07 Xiaomi Su7 or
Su7.
Yeah. Su7. Yep.
Yeah. And he's basically has said, and it's like, first of all, they're getting a lot of the actual resources here. So their battery plants are coming online in Tennessee and Kentucky this year. Now we're in 2025. So they're going to be coming online. We'll see about that one in Michigan, because there's some issues now with CATL. But he also
they were put on the Pentagon
blacklist.
Blacklist.
Yeah.
So
we'll see what that means for.
Yeah.
And then their new not really subsidiary, but their Skunk Works out here in Long Beach. They are saying have said multiple times, like in 2027 we're going to have a $30,000 ish truck, and I think it's going to be like Ranger size, maybe slightly smaller, slightly bigger, and it's going to blow you away. And it's hard to know, because like I think everybody working on a product is like, oh my god, the next one's going to blow you away. It's the Elon mindset with every version of FSD. The next one's going to blow your mind, and the current one sucks, right? But we've run into numerous Ford employees that are not on the marketing side, and they're like, oh, you're going to love what's next. So hopefully
it just seems so far away. It seems like
tease though, like around 2026, because there's a lot coming out in 2026 that people are waiting for.
R2.
R2 and then the hints of R3 and everything. So I imagine like maybe towards the end of this year or the start of next year, we're gonna get a teaser. And then people are gonna just be chomping at the bit, because I know
it's one of the things that we kind of referenced a few episodes back. But I think that the amount of money that was invested into the EV industry over the last 4 years has been imperative for the next phase of U.S. manufacturing, because the investments have been done by the local OEMs as well. I mean, the Blue Oval City creation, but like you were saying, the battery facility in Kentucky, Rivian just announced today that they had another plant that they're building in Georgia. All of these investments, they have to build and scale in order to get these costs down, because a lot of these are coming up with these ideas and making it in current factories or expansion of factories, but they're not really designed for scale. But that's the one thing that I think that China has the leg up on. But I think that the investment that's been done will help with the staging of the next few years, because I think Chris has mocked it a few times. It's always this big hype about, it was all about 2025, but it seems like now it's mostly 2027. There's like all these big, huge things, but it's because all the investments have been done to kind of line up. You can't make a $30,000 EV without the supply chain line to be able to manufacture the batteries and to get all of that in. So I think that we're setting ourselves up for a much more exciting ramp up as you can kind of scale it out. I was actually speaking to one of our listeners that actually works, I think, with MIT, and they were doing some research on the projected outlay of EV growth in our market over the next 5 years, and they had a high trajectory of it scaling upwards. And I think that's tailed strongly to what they were labeling out in their modeling towards the investments that are going into the EV sector and how that's going to affect the acquisition of vehicles ongoing.
Well, and
my
it
worry
comes
when
down
I
to
look
the
at this,
investment in locations too. You know, we've talked before about trying to debunk saying, oh, well, there's only 7 or 8 that's built. And though there's only like probably 12 or 13, we are bidding in, say, Virginia. We do know there's 38 sites that's been awarded in Virginia that will be coming under the money that's been spent. They're not here now, but they are coming. Kentucky, same way. It's filled out. There might be, I think we've been told there's a handful of sites that will be on the next round. So in the 12 states that we operate in, we know there's going to be an average of 30 to 40 fast chargers for everybody to use along these AFC corridors. They're not here yet, but they will be coming over the next 2 years. And that's exciting for us. And then additionally, they've unlocked the funds to where before you had to have them built before it unlocked the state's rest of the money. Now that's not the case. So the states will have the ability to use those funds for other things in the EV charging sector only. And not all the money is there, but a lot of it can't be touched. So we are going to have, you're not going to have to worry, am I going to be able to charge at 300 or 400 kilowatts going to my place? You're going to have 6 or 7 locations every 50 miles that you're going to be able to charge if you want to. And that's the important part, is that investment has been made. And I do feel like this year is where you're going to see that number go from 13 or 14 to well over into the multiple hundreds just within by the end of this year alone.
I just worry that we're going to be behind because, 2 years in China is a lifetime. Like they're having stuff today that's charging at 80% at 300 plus kilowatts that some of these NEVI machines that'll be in a year from now can't even do. So in 2 years, in 2027, man, if Ford isn't engineering a 400 kilowatt charging vehicle that has a charge curve that goes to 80%, that is affordable, that has really streamlined and quick tech in it, they're going to be all proud of themselves. And then China's going to look over and giggle, and they're going to start rolling out this technology. I mean, 2 years, China hasn't even started their vehicle yet that Ford's been working on for 3 years. China hasn't even started their 2027 vehicle. They'll start that next year and then launch it, and you don't even know what they're going to roll. Some semi-solid state, crazy, that worries me. It worries me that we don't feel like we have a burning platform and we're not urgent enough on this stuff. That's
The
my
800
worry
volt
about.
architecture is a mandation for all vehicles moving forward. I mean, I think that we talked about this. I think it's a sweet spot where there's, not a 200 kilowatt battery pack, but a regular size battery pack with the high end charging speeds. I think that you can get a lot of use case out of that for the average driver. But it's something that you're gonna see survive or fall. And we were looking at Nissan and some of the outlays of what's coming down with that, but like these OEMs are either going to pick it up or they're going to fail to the companies who have been advanced. And like you guys were saying, I think that Ford's doing a lot right with investigating, reallocating, being strategic with their planning, because I do think that they realize, and I think Jim, you're seeing him in his leadership investigating what China's doing because they are doing it right. And so modeling after that and saying, how can we implement some of that technology or that value and being invested in what they're doing, it helps understand how to mirror that, because the car manufacturing space is not the same as it was 20 years ago, and it's continuing to evolve. And so it's an adapt or die situation for I think a lot of these traditional OEMs.
And I think it's a very historic transition that we're going through. And a lot of people sort of just want to focus on like we're electrifying our vehicles. And I'm like, there's actually like a 3-pronged challenge for Ford and GM. And one is electrification. That's huge. The second part is that software-defined vehicle. It's like people are going to hop in. And like you were saying, Chris, like about like now if it doesn't have intelligent adaptive cruise control, you're like, oh God. But now there's going to be so many other things that are like, if it doesn't have this, if it doesn't have dog mode, or pet mode, you're going to be like, oh my God, I don't want that. And then the third thing is like the another source of country of manufacturer origin, because like we had this, you know, back in the 70s with the Japanese companies, and then the Korean companies came, and now we have the juggernaut of China coming. So it's sort of like there's a lot more companies, and you could actually even add a fourth is with Lucid and Rivian. It's so not, I won't say easier, but like nobody thought of starting up another car manufacturing company in the US that had plans of going large scale. Like you had like little niche manufacturers, but now you literally have people going like, hey, you know what? I'm going to start up a car company. We're going to sell a bunch of trucks, and we're going to be one of the best selling trucks in the US. And you're like, 10 years ago, you would have laughed at them for even having that idea. So there's like all of these things that Ford and GM, and we can even throw Stellantis in there. They have to survive. And you can lump in like the Japanese and the German, and those manufacturers, they're dealing with this same thing. And it's the one worry that I have for like Honda is like, are they doing a little bit of the typical, Hondas they're solid, they're reliable, blah, 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 blah. Like, but the Saloon gives me hope, that they're going a little bit more radical. Let's push the envelope a little bit more, because like the Sony Afila is literally like, we're aiming at about 300 miles of range and 150 kilowatt charging. And I'm like,
150, what are you talking about?
In 2019 for the Mach-E, I'm like, come on, man. And I'm like, for me, that's adequate. But like, if Ford had announced like, hey, we got a Mach-E refresh coming next year, and it's going to be 300 miles of range, 150 kilowatt charging, they'd have a revolt.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. The Honda example is so strange because you've got the Honda Prologue that just because of their brand name and trust alone spiked like number four behind Mach-E, and Model Y, Model 3, Mach-E, and Prologue, right? Isn't that the order of where they're at? And
yeah, it's up there.
Yeah,
and it did. Tested one, and I liked it for everything. And I'm like, here's my biggest issue, because I love that they have CarPlay and Android Auto. It has OnStar, which I'm like, that seems weird Honda. But I'm like, I wish they would have just licensed Super Cruise, because it's like it doesn't have any lane centering. It has lane keep assist, but I'm like, you're going to pay like $55,000-$60,000 for a car, and it doesn't have lane centering.
Way too much. It's a lease. It's one of those, they got to lease it, basically, I think. But it's just so weird that it's just so disjointed, where they're going to have, in a year or two, presumably, you'll still have the Prologue, you'll have the Honda, you'll have the one, the Ophelia or whatever, right? With it's just such a weird, disjointed thing. That's like they're just trying to see what sticks on the wall. And I had assumed Sony was going to be their go-to, like their version of Android Automotive. I thought everything was going to be Sony, and you're discovering no, it's very different. They're going to have these separate. You're going to have this GM buddy, my Sony buddy, and then I'm going to have the stuff that Honda does themselves, and it just feels weird.
And they may be merging with Nissan.
True. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Very strange. I know we're kind of running up against it. Did you have time to talk about the Scout real quick? Because I know that's something that you guys got to see.
There's been a lot of coverage of the Scout. They look fantastic in person. Somebody just asked me today, is it Rivian size or Lightning size? And it's definitely Lightning size. Liv got a really good tour of the inside, including some of the software, which of course they just signed the agreement with Rivian.
Yeah, I did. It was actually the UI UX designer, Dre, that guy right there. It's really nice. I mean, I wasn't expecting to like Scout as much as I did in person. I mean, the branding's on point. It does feel a bit Rivian in a way, but then they do distinguish themselves. I think I was saying on the batteries included podcast or something, like I think they should have dirt at the display, because these are made to be used. They're made to get dirty. The manual buttons, the metal, the graphite, the leather stitching, it's just really, really good, and it makes you want to play with it. It feels like a retro old school truck, but modern, just everything embedded into it, a super smooth system. So I'm really excited about it. Obviously, I wish they had a smaller offering as well. But I was tickled. Those are going to be awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks really sharp. I'm excited to see that
Yeah.
one progress. I mean, when they announced it, I was like, that's sharp. I mean, the fact that it's also closer to Lightning size, I appreciate. I mean, I love Rivian and everything that they've done, but I don't fit inside of an R1S or RS.
R1S,
R1S,
R1T,
yeah.
R1S.
Wait,
My,
how tall
my
are you?
brain is failing me. But yeah, I mean, I'm 6'6" and a large dude.
Whoa.
And so a
Yeah.
Lightning just fits me. And that was been my complaint in the R1S and the R1T. I mean, they're just both smaller vehicles, which is fine for most of the market. But for me, being a larger guy, like I'd like it the size of a full-size truck. And so before I bought my Lightning, I was driving an F-150, just a regular F-150. So transitioning to a Lightning, I got to experience the same space and comfort that existed. But if you look inside of if you flip over to the EV market, there's very few options that are really just like full size vehicle. Like, we reviewed the Cadillac Escalade. There's not really a full size SUV offering on the market outside of the Escalade, because the R1S is more of the size of like an Explorer, like one of those mid-size SUVs. And so on the full size SUV scale, that's a needed niche. Now, Escalade's 150 grand. There needs to be a cheaper version than that. At the same time, like there's not a ton of entries into the market. You have the Tesla with their 3-row, but it's a small. You have the R1S, which is a 3-row, but it's small. And so there needs to be that full size for the people that want to have that type of offering. But for me, being a larger dude, I appreciate the fact that Scout's going to provide a vehicle that's going to feel bigger and more robust. And Jesse's commented on it. The bench seat all the way across the front is just kind
That's what I was gonna ask.
That
Actually,
looks cool.
I wish that we could.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, I wish we could take you with when we go places, because both of us being like 5'5", 5'6", we need like a 6'6" person to get that impression. And I'm curious,
anytime. Just shoot me when and where.
hold on, how's the bench seat? How does that impress you? The bench seat as a tall person.
I mean, for me, it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of cool to have like that old retro vibe of like the bench seat.
Okay.
I mean, for me, like the space of a normal size seat, maybe if it was a smaller vehicle, the extra space would be nice. But the bench seat is just kind of cool to have like that older style. You haven't seen a bench seat produced in a truck. And I don't know if I'm not super car savvy when it comes to like all the old retro vehicles, but it's been quite a while since you've seen that introduced.
Sure.
I think so there's like the vehicles, which are of course prototypes, and they're like they want to be vague about some of this, what they're going to do with it. But I think because we talked to Ryan Decker, who's like the second employee that Scout ever had, and it's sort of like he was talking about like if he wanted to design a new company from scratch right now, it's sort of like look at what Scout has. It's like they're taking that old tradition of Scout. They know that heritage, including a bench seat, ruggedness, but also respecting the fact that Scouts are also popular, like in the Hamptons. It's sort of like, so it's a little bit of luxury in there. The VW German engineering, adding in Rivian software, it's sort of
Good
like,
mix.
wow, it's a really dang good mix. And then of course, it's going to be manufactured here in the US. So they're putting together a lot of good like aspects of what we want to see, and it's sort of like, yeah, it is actually a pretty neat process that they're going through, and I'm really excited.
Bronco did a really good job with their refresh and their gas model from the old school to that new refresh. I dislike the Bronco Sport. People are welcome to have their opinion on it, but the full size Bronco, the Sasquatch package, like for being a Bronco, like I think that was a really cool looking refresh. And I think very similar. Scout was kind of in that same space. They're refreshing the EV space with this new look. They did a very good job, at least for the initial presentation of it. I think that SUV model, that Bronco-y style look, it's going to be a very cool and good entry into the market, especially with the fact that they're offering that EV and that hybrid solution with options to kind of give people of different, if you have any question marks about all EV, you have that security of the gas if you wanted that hybrid setup. I mean, there's some unique things I think with what they're doing that's going to make them a really unique entry when they launch. Are they 2027? Is that right?
Yeah.
So they're one of the 2027 releases. But
one of the many.
But
it's
very like production ready.
Like it looked like you could have driven that off the lot. Like they look ready. But they got to
Design
build a
everything.
plant. They got to
Yeah.
build a factory.
There's that.
Our goal, I mean, we're just a hop, skip, and a jump away from where they're building. So with us
Mm-hmm.
working in the Southeast, we're going to try to get a tour of their facility as they get that up and ramping. But yeah, it's exciting to see what they're doing for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think the last thing to touch on is just when we saw you guys at Act Expo, there was a lot of charging there. Like all the different charging folks were there. Did you see anything in terms of Tesla talked about their induction charging? Did you see all the same players in charging? Was charging not really part of CES? Did you see any creative things with induction or any of these Chinese? The way we talk about Chinese auto manufacturers, did you see any of these big boy, huge charging options?
I don't think it was quite like ABB wasn't there this year, but Star Charge, which is like one of the biggest in the world, was there. We have a video with Autel. They're updating their lineup.
Blink was actually one of the sponsors, one or the sponsor of West Hall, which is like the vehicle tech hall, basically. I mean, CES is kind of the biggest EV show of the year in a lot of ways. So like the whole of West Hall is filled with EVs and charging. But there wasn't like that I recall.
Electricity wasn't there. They do wireless charging.
Yeah.
It was more of like
faster, more powerful,
seeing 480 kilowatt chargers and above. So they were all there, and it was all it was like of interest to us, and we like talked to a couple of them. We've learned that like the videos don't do quite as well, so we have like Autel, and we just curious what Blink is doing, so we stopped by there and we have
an interview, but mostly connecting with them and chatting. They're all still there. They're all still cranking along.
It seems like the biggest thing was, and it's sort of like yay Nevi and then boo Nevi, because like it sort of seems like maybe last year, the year before, there was like this like push for innovation, and like we're doing all these crazy things, and now and not just Nevi, but Nevi and Nax, and it seems like this year it was a lot of like we're Nevi compliant, we're built in the US, and we have a Nax option. So it was sort of exciting stuff, but it wasn't necessarily like cutting edge. Like last year, I think we saw more wireless charging and megawatt charging. We did see megawatt charging.
We did see megawatt charging, and actually Zeekr had an auto charger. It's like a charging robot. We were actually at their press event, media event, whatever, and so the whole presentation, which was like the vehicle auto driving in a parking lot, parks, and then the robot comes and charges it. I think actually Lacey Misco Electric got a demo of it on the floor, so check out her video. But that was an interesting concept, and I certainly like the idea. Like you just park somewhere and it goes for you. Like that'd be great, and stops if you needed to. What else?
It's not as glamorous, as like some of the other stuff, and there's other EV related stuff. We have a whole video covering, or we will have a whole video covering some of this other stuff, but some of it was like things like hard to film as well. Like Hyundai Mobis had a demo of instead of like a heads up display, it was like a augmented reality windshield. So the entire windshield. So like, like your heads up display is usually like this little area of like the speed limit and whatever, but this would like flash red when it sees like a pedestrian.
That's cool.
And it's some cool concepts, just really hard to portray on camera.
And actually we did a lot of like looking into like the random tech that was around. So there's this company, WePower. This is not related to automotive, but it was just a really cool idea. So we went to check them out. And it's like the little devices around your home that use just a tiny bit of power to actualize. So charging them up with magnet, basically, so that they store the power. So like in our case, we had a leak last year that caused a huge amount of damage. We have water sensors in the wall now in case that happens again. Knock on wood, throw salt, everything. But obviously you need to replace the batteries for those. But this company, WePower, you can sort of like charge up a device like that, and it's holding that charge until it's used. So you never have to go get it unless it gets
generating
used.
power from things like
when you
like a door opening and closing, like those also have batteries in them that got to be replaced like every year or whatever. And then it's like, if it dies, do you actually know? So what this does is like, it's actually using the fact that the battery or the magnets, when it opens and closes,
It like
it's
rotates.
literally like generating just enough power to help charge
Just
the
from
battery.
the motion.
Yeah.
Just from the
Yeah,
motion
so-
of the
Charging.
like
Yeah.
watches. Remember watches that would self-wind because of your arm? The self-winding
yeah.
watch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
really, it's hard tech to show. We actually have like a wrap-up video of our own that we spent like 2 hours filming yesterday. It's gonna be a mess to edit. But we like try to show the We Power company, but that's hard stuff to show. But it'll be really interesting to see that tech when it comes down to the consumer, where we have these little devices, like people who have door sensors, like a lot of us do, and you just never have to worry about charging them or changing batteries. It's just like, it's good.
And then there was some other, speaking of charging EV stuff, there was, like last year I thought everybody was talking about, V to G or V to H is coming this year. People are still talking about it coming. Honda with their Zero series announced a relationship with Emporia, that they will have V to H or V to G, I can't remember which, using Emporia. And Emporia makes like our highly recommended charger that we have out in our garage, because it's low cost as well. So there were some,
And we've toured their facility, and
yeah, there were some, like little minor things like that sort of got brushed away because the saloon looks really cool, but there's also some cool technology. They're going to have V to H capability.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean the amount of technology that's coming, it's just it's kind of just funny to take a step back and look. Like you go back 30 years and the world is a completely different place, and here we are talking about some of this crazy technology that's just out of this world. Like just the advancements that are happening year over year, and like people just don't realize the stuff, and like some of these concepts now are what we see in 5 years, and it's kind of really cool to see how technology has evolved. Me being all of us really being on the younger side of things are kind of used to all this technology, but the older generation is kind of coming into this, just seeing like all of the chaos. I mean, like the internet's within our lifetimes, and seeing how that's progressed to the fact that we're dealing with these smart cars and full self-driving and batteries that charge themselves magnetically, like just all this crazy technology, and just kind of it's just cool to see all of it.
And it was neat because like you saw a lot of companies talking about ADAS and robo taxi type stuff. Waymo was inside, and then like while we were like making our way to the convention center, we see a Zoox, Zoox, autonomous vehicle, just driving on the streets, no driver, nothing. And we checked at Zoox because they had a booth there, and I'm like, hey, so are you guys doing like media drives? And like, oh no, it's only for friends and family. So I try to make friends with the guy, but he still wouldn't let us do it. But we're hoping to like check that stuff out. Waymo is actually out there doing stuff in LA, so we may go do a video with them. But it's like, it's really cool to see like there's some stuff on the show floor, but then you like literally go outside, you're like, wow, it's actually happening around us. It's really cool.
Yeah, 5 years from now, we're going to be dealing with auto taxis and EV tolls and some of this just crazy technology that you just wouldn't think that it ever existed. But it's here and it's developed. And like Jesse and I have done a lot of work in the EV toll space. We talked about that a little bit at the beginning. And like, their manufacturing is open and starting to produce. They're getting their certifications. Those vehicles are going to be flying this year. And so
it's like, fly one.
Yeah, we're potentially going to go learn how to fly
in February, maybe.
Pivotal. Yay.
We'll see.
It's a crazy, exciting time. I mean, by the time I go to retire, a lot of times as people get older, you always have the fight of like, I got to take the keys from grandpa, and they'll in our lifetime, but when we're grandpa, like I'm just going to get a self-driving car and it will take me where I want to go. And I won't have to worry about whether I have night blindness, or I won't have to worry about like, it's going to mobility wise, it's going to bring up so many great options, this technology. And so it's exciting to see that we're just kind of, we're in the dial-up modem days of this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then
sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm just remembering last year at CES actually, because we start in a lot of ways addressing the stuff from the concept of how cool it is, but you broached the topic of how accessible it is. So like a lot of the stuff is going to make being independent, being active, and being mobile more accessible as we age, because all of us will, if we're fortunate enough, we will age, and regardless of ability. And I'm remembering it was CES last year. I can't remember what the company was, but they were working on self-driving stuff. And this was specifically for retirement homes.
Oh, yeah.
So do you remember? And
Mhm.
like, it was one of those things where we're just like connecting with people, learning about tech and everything. And I wish that I'd kept better notes back then. Now I keep better notes. But the guy that was really working hard at this has genetic macular degeneration. And so he could see perfectly well right now. And but he knew that down the line he was going to face blindness. And part of the whole push for him was inspired by the looming complete limits that he was facing, but also the amount of accessibility that he'd be providing to people. So I think that's so cool. And like, that's a big sort of unsexy but awesome side of this is like, we may not be limited anymore. It may not be, you're older and like, can someone go pick up grandma? It's like grandma's coming, she's flying over, whatever.
Technology is good for the good that technology can do. And I mean, the advancements that
Yeah.
you're seeing, I mean, it's going to revolutionize how things are addressed in the future. And this auto, this auto do things on its own, space that's really rapidly evolving with AI and, the Tesla Optimus and some of these things that like you're seeing that is coming out is going to revolutionize what everybody's lives looks like in 50 years, because you're seeing those advancements in medicine and you're seeing those advancements in a lot of different things. But the traditional assist, like you're saying, you have to take your keys away conversation, it just becomes everybody's car drives themselves. And so grandpa can get to the doctor regardless of what things look like, because the vehicle is going to safely get you from A to B. And so some of those technology things that are just advancing, it's just going to continue to improve everyone's lives and make things safer, but also provide, like you were saying, accessibility and options for all. It's just technology with everything that it's doing is continuing to evolve. And that was one of the points I was going to make earlier, is I think that Tesla has done so well, and they're the number one, OEM, if you will, with market share. But that's because I think they're much more than just making cars. They're looking at the technology side of things. They're really advancing much more than just a singular outlet, which is EV, cars with their models. They're looking at the technology side of things and how do you promote and become a technology company, and that's what they've done so well. And the technologies are evolving so quickly, and it looks like they're taking strides in a lot of that with AI and everything else that they're doing. And so definitely something that with these companies, it's of how do you take that advancement in technology and implement it into your company, because that's really what's going to take you from where you're at to the next level.
Exciting times.
It is. But yeah, I think it's been a great conversation. Thank you guys for joining us. We could sit here for hours and have conversations. But,
100%.
Yeah.
as always, good things have to come to an end for at least the time being. And it's been an hour, so we want to respect the listener and keep things abbreviated.
And
but
tell everybody where to find you guys, Patrick and Liv. We'll leave a link in the description. But where are these folks going to find all these awesome videos?
Just Google Mach-E vlog with the VLOG. You'll find us.
Yeah.
We have a website, but of course we're on YouTube. We're on Blue Sky, Threads. We try to stay active, but just you'll find us. We're also Mustang Mach-E Club of America, co-founders of that, and we work with the Lightning Club.
Co-founders as in us too.
Yeah.
And we have a website, EV Explored. I write for a Girl's Guide to Cars, so if you ever want to come read stuff from my outlook specifically, you can find us sort of all over. We should probably like put everything in one spot better. Yeah.
And my boss is looking for me, so I need to get back to work.
Yeah.
You're good. Well, thank you guys for hopping on. Definitely subscribe to Mach-E Vlog if you don't. Subscribe to us if you don't. But also go to Bowe Family EV and subscribe to them as well. But thank you guys so much for joining in. It's been another great episode of Turn Down for What. Tune in next week for more EV news and updates.
Bye.
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 Thanks for tuning in to Turn Down for What. Make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on to tune in to more EV news and updates. See you next time.